Have you ever wondered why the people who hurt you most always seem to arrive before the one who truly loves you? Why does God, in his mysterious way, allow you to meet the narcissist before sending the soulmate meant for your life? Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That sentence opens the door to a greater truth. Nothing you encounter is random. Every person who enters your life plays a role in awakening your soul. The narcissist, cruel as they may be, is also an instrument of God sent not to destroy you, but to reveal the parts of yourself you've refused to face. When you carry the fear of abandonment, he sends someone who forces you to confront it. When you live for validation, he sends someone who takes all validation away. When you love to the point of losing yourself, he sends someone who makes you understand that love is not sacrifice, but clarity. In those relationships, you're not simply experiencing pain, you're being remade. Every tear you shed is not meaningless. It's washing away the illusions you once called love. And in the moments when you feel most abandoned, God is working most silently. Because only when your heart breaks open can it become wide enough to hold the love he has prepared for you. The narcissist is not a mistake. They are an initiation, a refining fire, a lesson about your own soul. When the lesson is complete, they disappear not because they've changed, but because you have. You no longer vibrate at the old frequency of lack, of rescuing, of fear. You begin to radiate the frequency of awareness, self-respect, and true love. And it's exactly then that your soulmate arrives not to complete you, but to walk beside you. For God never gives you the love you seek until you have become the embodiment of that love yourself. Reason 1. To reflect the parts of you that have never been loved. God doesn't send the narcissist to punish you, but to help you see yourself more clearly. According to Jung, people don't attract what they want, they attract what they are. When you still carry the fear of abandonment, the craving for validation, or the feeling of not being enough, the universe sends you a mirror to reflect all those wounds. And that mirror often takes the shape of a narcissist. They reflect your deepest insecurities to you through indifference, through manipulation, through making you feel that love is something you must earn rather than something that flows naturally. Most empaths carry childhood wounds, years spent trying to earn a parent's gaze, approval, or affection. Love became a reward instead of a birthright. To survive, you learned to sense others, reading faces, guessing emotions, staying hyper-aware just to maintain peace. You became the one who listens, who loves deeply, who endures. But beneath it all is a fear. If I don't please others, I won't be loved. Then one day, you meet them. The narcissist enters your life like magic. They see you, praise you, and make you believe you've finally been truly noticed. Their eyes, their words, their early affection awaken the child inside you. The child who only ever begged for one thing. Please choose me. You think you found destiny, but in truth, you've met the same old pattern in a new form. Someone who gives you love at first, then slowly withdraws it, forcing you to chase after your worth. Jung calls this the mechanism of shadow projection. When the soul is forced to confront what it's long avoided, the narcissist loves themselves excessively, while you love others to the point of self-erasure. They exaggerate the ego. You erase it. These two extremes draw each other not for romantic destiny, but for spiritual destiny, so that both sides of the same lesson can be seen and integrated. At first, you resent it. Why did I meet someone like this? But then, in silence, you realize without them, you would never have seen how much of yourself you sacrificed in the name of love. When you understand that everything they did was merely a projection of your own unhealed parts, the anger dissolves, making room for awareness. God never lets a soul step into darkness unless it's ready to see the light. The narcissist is only a tool to help you see the part of you that's been hidden, the inner child longing for love yet never held. And when you dare to face that child and embrace it with the love you once begged from others, healing begins. From that moment on, their power fades because you reclaim the mirror as your own. And in that mirror, for the first time, you see not them, but yourself, whole, enough, and worthy as you've always been. Reason 2. To learn the lesson of boundaries. If the first part of the journey is about awareness, seeing your inner wounds, then the next lesson God teaches through the narcissist is boundaries. Boundaries are not simply the ability to say no, but the ability to keep your soul intact even while you love. Empaths are born with open hearts. They feel more deeply than others and forgive more easily. From childhood, they were taught that kindness is good, yielding is loving, and enduring is noble. Unconsciously, they start equating love with sacrifice. So when they meet a narcissist, someone who knows how to exploit kindness with precision, the empath falls into the trap immediately. They believe that if they love more, wait longer, forgive deeper, everything will change. But the narcissist doesn't see love in those actions. They see energy they can control. According to Jung, if you don't know your boundaries, others will shape them for you. In a relationship with a narcissist, this truth becomes painfully clear. You begin with understanding, but slowly you lose yourself. You excuse their silence, forgive their first lie, tell yourself, everyone has weak moments. But every small compromise collects into a psychological blind spot, where you no longer differentiate between compassion and self-abandonment. And the narcissist instinctively senses that weak boundary. They slip through every crack gently but firmly. Soon, you find yourself in familiar situations, explaining things you never did, apologizing for your own feelings, staying quiet because you fear losing them. You tell yourself, better I get hurt than hurt them, but eventually you realize the truth. You're loving in a way that abandons yourself, and that's the moment of awakening. Jung calls this the confrontation with the shadow of goodness, when we realize even kindness can become a tool of darkness if it lacks awareness. Kindness without boundaries is self-destruction in disguise. Loving without self-respect, forgiving without discernment, accepting without wisdom, this is not love. It's a fear of losing the role of the good one. Through their harshness, the narcissist becomes a ruthless teacher of this lesson. They show you that not all affection is valuable, and not all silence is peace. They teach you that saying no is not cruelty, it's an act of honoring your soul. At the soul level, boundaries are not walls. They're the fence that protects the garden of your peace. When you begin setting boundaries, the narcissist reacts violently. They accuse you of changing, of being selfish, of becoming cold. But here's the truth. That's the first signal that you're learning correctly. Because when boundaries appear, their illusion of control collapses. And in that collapse, you finally realize you never had to lose anyone to keep yourself. God doesn't send the narcissist to take your goodness away, but to refine it, to teach you that love without boundaries is not love. It's a dependency. And once you learn that, your love becomes wise. It's no longer a burning flame that consumes you, but a light that guides you. You love not out of fear of losing someone, but because you understand protecting your boundaries is protecting the dignity of love itself. Reason 3. To learn how to distinguish real love from emotional manipulation. If the lesson of boundaries teaches you how to protect yourself, this lesson teaches you how to discern between true love and possession disguised as affection. It's one of the harshest yet most enlightening lessons a soul can experience. When you meet a narcissist, the first thing you feel is not doubt, it's an almost sacred sense of connection. They appear as the person you've been waiting for your whole life. Understanding, attentive, passionate. The constant messages, the flattering words that melt your heart, the gaze that makes you feel like you're the center of their universe. This is what Jung called the projection of the ideal. You're not seeing them, you're seeing the image of the person you long to be loved by. But once they've secured your attachment, everything that once lifted you up begins to pull you down. Attention becomes control. Listening becomes interrogation. Romantic gestures begin to mix with silence, coldness, and distance. You start to wonder, what did I do wrong? And that's when the emotional manipulation cycle begins. A narcissist doesn't love you for who you are. They love how you make them feel about themselves. They're intoxicated by your light, your empathy, your softness, your emotional depth. But when that same light reflects back and exposes their darkness, they begin to attack. They make you doubt your intuition, twist reality, and plant seeds of guilt in your heart. Every time you tell the truth, they turn it into proof that you're too sensitive, or you always exaggerate. According to Jung, this is the stage of shadow possession, when you become entangled in someone else's unconscious game and lose the ability to discern truth from distortion. You try to love more, prove more, give more, while your inner world slowly drains. You don't realize you're being conditioned to prioritize their emotions over your own truth. What makes empaths especially vulnerable is their belief that love can heal everything. You think that if you're good enough, patient enough, forgiving enough, they will change. But true love never requires you to abandon your clarity to prove your heart. Jung once said, "Real love is not blind. It sees clearly and still chooses to stay, but never chooses to endure abuse." The lesson here is not to make you cold, but to make your love conscious. You learn that intense early affection is not evidence of love. It's often the sign of subtle manipulation, the kind that requires reaction, not connection. True love makes you feel peaceful, not anxious. It expands you, not shrinks you. Once you walk through the fire of emotional manipulation, you become someone who sees with the eyes of the soul, not with the eyes of old wounds. You realize there are two types of love in this world: love born from need and love born from awareness. The first creates dependency. The second creates freedom. God allows you to experience false love so you can learn to recognize true love. Without ever having been deceived by something that looks like love, you'd never fully appreciate the real thing, the kind that doesn't keep you awake at night, doesn't fill you with fear, and doesn't make you beg to be seen. It simply exists, quietly, deeply, and steadily. This is when you understand the lesson is not to avoid love, but to see love clearly. The narcissist comes to blur your vision, but God allows them to appear so you can learn to see through the fog and recognize the real light when it finally arrives. Reason 4. To learn how to love yourself before you can truly love anyone else. After walking through the illusions of love, where understanding turned out to be manipulation and trust turned out to be a trap, you begin to see a cold yet liberating truth. You never truly loved yourself. You loved through the role of the savior, the tolerant one, the one who tries hard enough to be chosen. But deep inside, you didn't love yourself. You pitied yourself without ever respecting yourself. The narcissist appears not just to hurt you, but to expose the true relationship between you and yourself. Everything you endured from them was simply a reflection of how you treated yourself in silence. How many times did you forgive them while refusing to forgive yourself for trusting the wrong person? How many times did you stay quiet to keep the peace while your own heart was screaming for space? How many times did you apologize just to avoid abandonment when the person who truly needed to apologize was them? These actions were not compassionate. They were symptoms of a lack of self-love. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But how can you become yourself if you constantly sacrifice yourself just to be loved? God's answer is the narcissist. They come to shatter your false idea of love, to show you that love is not something you beg for, and kindness is not a ticket to being respected. Empaths often believe that love is something they give endlessly and unconditionally. But through the narcissist, you learn that love cannot exist without self-respect. A soul that doesn't love itself will always attract people who mirror that emptiness, people who love only as long as you serve their narrative. And so the deepest lesson the universe sends you is this: do not love to be chosen, love to be true. The journey of self-love is not an easy one. It requires you to move against everything you were conditioned to believe. When you start saying no, you'll be called selfish. When you choose to walk away, you'll be accused of being cold. When you stop healing people who don't want to change, you'll be labeled cruel. But this is the initiation of the soul, because real love, both towards yourself and others, always requires honesty. And honesty sometimes means choosing yourself even when it disappoints others. According to Jung, this is the phase of individuation, the integration of the self. It means you're no longer pulled by extremes or defined by others' perceptions. You become the observer, knowing who you are, what you need, and when to walk away. Self-love in this phase is no longer a slogan. It becomes a spiritual practice. You begin asking yourself gently, am I tired? Do I truly want to be here? Does this still nourish my soul? And in that silence, something miraculous happens. You no longer look for love. Love begins to look for you. Not the loud, dramatic kind, but the peaceful, conscious, deep kind. You attract people who see your true worth because now you see it too. God doesn't want you to be alone. He wants you to be full. Because only when you learn to love yourself, not for anyone, not to prove anything, does love from others cease to be salvation and become resonance. And that's the moment Jung refers to as the sacred union between two free souls, when you no longer love to be completed, but love from a place where you already are whole. Reason 5. To forge your spiritual innocence into wisdom. Before meeting the narcissist, you believed that loving sincerely was enough. You believed that everyone had a good side, that if you were patient enough, forgiving enough, the other person would change. That's not stupidity. It's spiritual innocence, the early stage of a soul that hasn't yet learned that light must be accompanied by awareness. But God doesn't want you to lose that goodness. He wants you to transform it into wisdom. And for that to happen, your soul must be tested by fire. And that fire bears the name of the narcissist. At first, you think you're in a beautiful love story. They appear as the perfect person. They listen. They say exactly what you want to hear. They pretend to share your values. You don't realize you're being deliberately mirrored. The narcissist doesn't truly see you. They simply copy you to win your trust. They're masters of imitating light. And this is where your lesson begins. When the illusion collapses, what hurts isn't just the loss of love, but the loss of your faith in human nature. You begin to wonder, is there anyone genuine left in this world? And that's the turning point where your soul moves from innocence to wisdom. Jung calls this phase the death of innocence, not to turn you bitter, but to elevate you to a higher level of awareness. From trusting people to understanding people. Empaths often carry an angelic energy. They see the potential for good in every soul. But what they don't realize is that light without discernment destroys itself. The more you want to see the good, the more likely you are to deny the bad. And when you refuse to see darkness, darkness will come to you to be seen. The narcissist is precisely that form. They come to teach you to keep your eyes open when you love. In real life, this shows up clearly. After that relationship, you begin to notice small details you used to ignore. The gap between words and actions. Apologies that never lead to change. Compliments that sound like manipulation. You realize that kindness must be placed wisely. Trust must be tested by time. And love should never ask you to blind yourself to keep it. This is the transformation from innocence to wisdom. It's not that you lose your purity. It's that you learn how to protect it. Like a candle, your light no longer flickers helplessly in the wind. It's now shielded by the lantern of discernment. You still love, still trust, still feel deeply, but you no longer hand out your energy carelessly. You know who truly deserves to be near your flame. Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And that's what you've done. The narcissist's darkness helped you see your own innocence, the part of you that believed everyone is like you. But now you understand. Not everyone wants to heal, and not everyone is capable of love. Some people come only to test whether you've learned your previous lessons. From that point on, your kindness becomes disciplined. You no longer try to save others. You inspire them to save themselves. You no longer give unconditionally. You give with awareness. You understand that love and wisdom are not opposites. They're two wings of the same soul. One keeps your heart warm, the other keeps it safe. And when you reach that balance, you're no longer afraid of the dark because you know you are a sovereign light. No need to prove it. No need to defend it. God doesn't want you to become suspicious. He wants you to see clearly. For wisdom is the matured form of faith, faith that is no longer blind but enlightened. And in that place, your soul enters a new phase. You no longer look at the world through the eyes of a child who believes love will fix everything, but through the eyes of someone who understands that only love with awareness truly heals. Reason 6. To experience the principle of opposites, Enantiodromia, and rebalance your soul. Carl Jung once said, "Everything in the psyche, when pushed to the extreme, turns into its opposite." This is the essence of Enantiodromia, the law the universe uses to restore spiritual order within each soul. And in the empath's journey, the narcissist is the instrument of that reversal. When you live too long at one pole of the spectrum where love equals sacrifice, where kindness means self-erasure, life will send you someone at the opposite pole to pull you back to your center. From childhood, you were taught that being gentle is virtuous, enduring is loving, and tolerating is noble. You grew up with an unconscious belief that your existence must be useful to someone. You became the comforter, the fixer, the one who carries other people's emotions without realizing you are losing your own identity. That's the extreme of light, a light so bright it blinds you. The universe doesn't punish you for this. It simply refuses to let you dissolve in someone else's orbit. So it sends the darkness, the narcissist, as a counterforce to pull you back to yourself. At first, you feel they're your perfect match. In reality, they're your inner opposite trying to return home. They embody what you never dared to be: confident, self-centered, unafraid of losing anyone. You're drawn to what you lack. This is not love. It's an unconscious hunger for wholeness. In them, you see the disowned parts of yourself, the part that can say no, set limits, and protect itself. But instead of integrating that part, you fall in love with it in the form of another person. And as with all extremes, the scale tilts out of balance. The reversal begins when you're exhausted. When you finally see that loving to the point of losing yourself is not light, it's a form of self-destruction. Then something strange happens. Your energy starts to shift. I'll endure this becomes I can't take this anymore. I understand you becomes I need to understand myself. I'm afraid of losing you becomes I'm afraid of losing you. Afraid of losing myself. You're not changing. You're reversing polarity. Your energy is balancing itself so you can exist as a whole being. According to Jung, when energy moves from one extreme to the other, the soul enters a phase called nigredo, the dark night of dissolution. You may become cold, distant, or even skeptical of everything. But don't mistake that for bitterness. In truth, you're being reborn. You no longer give unconditionally because you now understand the value of conditions. You no longer see boundaries as a sin because you've tasted the cost of not having them. You no longer confuse attachment with love because you once called a prison home. When the empath goes through Enantiodromia, they don't become a copy of the narcissist. They become a complete version of themselves, a soul that carries both light and shadow, that knows how to love and how to leave. Like the sun, it warms, but it can also burn. You learn that kindness without teeth is just weakness, and love without wisdom is just dependency. In everyday life, this is obvious. You begin to act differently. You no longer react when provoked. You no longer over-explain when misunderstood. You no longer bow your head when blamed. You don't need to shout to defend your boundaries. Your calm has become your declaration. And when the narcissist sees this, they panic because they realize you've become what they only pretended to be: strong, self-possessed, and independent of external validation. The difference is you don't need to crush anyone to stand tall. You only need to be yourself. Jung called the outcome of Enantiodromia conjunctio oppositorum, the union of opposites. When the good and the dark in you no longer fight, but coexist in awareness. When you no longer choose between loving and letting go, but know when to love and when to let go. When you no longer try to be the light, but know the light has always been there, even in the darkness you once feared. That's the moment your soul reaches sacred balance. You're no longer too good to be hurt, nor too close to love. You become the still center where both poles meet, the place God calls the wisdom of love. Because in the end, the lesson the narcissist brings is not for you to choose a side, but for you to integrate both. From that point on, you're no longer pulled by extreme souls. You become neutral in the highest sense. And that neutrality makes your light unbearable for those who are still unbalanced. They leave not because you've changed into someone else, but because you've become too real. And when that happens, you understand Enantiodromia is not just a psychological law, but a baptism of the soul, where you walk through the dark so you no longer fear it. Reason 7. So that only when you become whole will you recognize true love. When you're not yet whole, love always takes the shape of searching. Searching for someone to soothe your wounds. Searching for a shoulder to prove you're worthy. Searching for eyes that reflect a version of yourself you've never seen within. But after you walk through the bruising journey with the narcissist, after you pull each blade out of your heart and sit quietly inside your own pain, you discover something profound. True love doesn't begin from lack, but from wholeness. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." He's saying a meeting between two souls is only truly love when both are transformed, when neither dissolves into the other. But to reach that point, you must go through what Jung called individuation, the journey back to the center of your being, where the light and shadow within you are reconciled, where you no longer seek anyone to fill a void because you've become the fullness you once searched for. Before, you loved to be chosen. Now you love because you have so much to give. Before, you clung to others to avoid loneliness. Now you honor solitude as a sacred space to listen to your soul. Before, you feared abandonment. Now you know that sometimes leaving is how the universe opens a new door. You no longer see love as a reward, but as resonance, where two independent souls meet not to save each other, but to shine together. Think back to when you first left the narcissist. Your heart was shattered, your trust broken. But in that long night, something within you began to awaken. You started to see that the pain came not to destroy you, but to teach you to see with different eyes, the eyes of consciousness. You realized you did not out of love, but out of fear of losing. You endured not because you were strong, but because you feared being left behind. You forgave not because you were compassionate, but because you were afraid to be alone. And when you recognize that, you understand, true love has no fear. True love doesn't make you anxious. It doesn't make you doubt yourself. It doesn't ask you to trade your self-respect for a place in someone's life. It needs no oaths because it is the truth. It needs no evidence because it exists effortlessly. And only someone who has walked through their own darkness without losing faith in the light can enter this kind of love. When you're whole, you no longer search for someone to make you feel safe because you are safe. You no longer search for someone to give you worth because you know your worth. You no longer search for someone to make you feel loved because you've become love itself. And when that happens, your energetic frequency changes. You no longer emit the frequency of need, but of peace. You no longer attract demanding souls, but harmonious ones. You no longer search for a missing half because you know that only two whole souls can truly recognize each other. In real life, this shows up subtly. When you see someone who once hurt you, your heart no longer trembles. When someone leaves, you no longer collapse. When someone chooses you, you no longer feel inferior. You smile not because you're detached, but because you finally understand. True love never abandons you. It only changes form and teaches you to love on a higher level. At the deepest level, you realize that a soulmate is not the missing piece, but the mirror of the completeness within you. When you've reconciled with yourself, you no longer need someone to illuminate you. You only need someone to grow brighter with. And the universe, in its delicacy, will arrange for those souls to meet not early, not late, but at the exact moment you're peaceful enough to stop searching. This is the union of opposites. Jung spoke of coniunctio oppositorum, where love is no longer an egoic game but a sacred ritual between two souls who have found themselves. You no longer love because you need to, but because you choose. You no longer hold on out of fear, but because you want to evolve together. You no longer ask, do they love me? But can we grow in this love together? And then, when you meet that person, the true soulmate, you'll know. Not because your heart beats wildly, but because it's calm. Not because they make you forget yourself, but because they make you remember who you are. They don't come to fill a void, but to build something meaningful with you. They don't take your freedom. They show you that love and freedom have never been opposites. And that's when you understand. Everything the narcissist destroyed was not an ending. It was a doorway. They came to break you open so you would stop loving through illusion and start loving through an awakened soul. So when you're whole, you no longer search for a soulmate. You become a soulmate. And when two whole souls meet, it's no longer love. It's the union of consciousness where God smiles through two awakened eyes. Welcome to Empire of the Mind. Subscribe and share.